My dad's old truck was sitting outside of our house. It was parked there for years. No one ever drove it. The only thing we used it for was to store stuff in the back of it. But it was an old truck from the 70s, so it had a really powerful engine that needed oil changes every couple months, or else it would rust and break down. So one day my dad had me drive it to the mechanic shop and drop it off for an oil change. I was drive it back home. Since my dad was be able to pick it up until later that evening, so I just parked it out front and left. When I came back about 3 hours later, I started to panic. At first I couldn't see anything because this mechanic shop is tucked away in a little valley where the sun sets earlier than everywhere else, and it was pitch black by now. But when I turned on my car's headlights, I noticed something that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. The truck's window was rolled down slightly, and it looked like someone had been sitting in the driver's seat, but they weren't there anymore. Now, this is stupid, I thought, trying to convince myself that everything was fine. Someone probably just sat in my truck while they were waiting for their own vehicle to get serviced, and then they got in their car and drove off when they saw me coming. But then I noticed something else. There was a single muddy footprint on the floorboard of the passenger side. And when I say floorboard, I mean way up here. That was at least 2 or 3 feet off the ground, which meant whoever left this print was either standing on something or sitting in the bed of the truck and then climbed in. And that was impossible because the truck was empty, and the bed of the truck was full of tools and wood planks. That would have made a lot of noise if someone tried moving them. Also, the print was small. It didn't look like my dad's size, nor did it look like any other adult I knew. It was definitely a kid's print. But none of our kids were anywhere near this place. They were all safely at home doing homework or playing video games. Now there's no way a child could have snuck into our truck and then gotten out without us noticing, right? I figured it must have been some sort of animal, except there was no animal hair. No tracks in the dirt leading to or from the truck, and the window was rolled up when I left. Whatever had happened here, it happened with zero noise, which was strange because this truck has a loud, powerful engine, and I'm sure whatever animal this was would have set it off. I decided to call my dad from inside the shop to tell him what I found, but he wasn't answering his phone. Usually he's pretty busy working on engines, but he always answers his phone if I call him while he's at work. Maybe he's in the bathroom. I thought maybe he's washing his hands and he'll answer soon. So I waited a few minutes and tried calling him again, but still nothing. This isn't like him. I know he'll answer. He never ignores his phone unless he's with a customer and can't talk. But we're at a mechanic shop. His customers are here with him. He would never ignore his phone while leaving them waiting. Well, I don't want to be bothering him anyway, so I grabbed my flashlight and walked around the truck to see if there was any other signs of entry, except there wasn't. So I climbed into the driver's seat, started the engine, and drove home. The whole time I kept checking over my shoulder, half expecting to see some strange kid climbing out of the truck bed and running after me, but that never happened. And eventually I stopped looking. It was late by the time I arrived home, but I didn't bother turning on any of the lights. I parked in the garage and ran into the kitchen to grab a glass of water. As I was doing that, I heard a knock at the front door. Strange, I thought, because we were expecting my dad, not anyone else. Still, I went to go check. I opened the door. I was shocked. Standing before me was my dad. He was covered in oil and grime. And behind him I could see the mechanic with a wrench in his hand. Hey, Dad, I said. What happened? Why did you come back here? You weren't supposed to come back here, Dad asked. What do you mean? I told him about the footprint and how I called him earlier, but he didn't answer. Instead, he marched past me and went straight into the garage. I followed him, confused, and he started inspecting the truck. Everything seemed normal to him. He even started talking to the mechanic about the oil change. He did nice. He didn't seem surprised or concerned that someone had snuck into the truck or that I received no answer when I called him. He also didn't ask why I was bringing the truck home so early. It was like he didn't hear me at all. That's weird, I thought. Was I dreaming? Did I imagine the whole thing? And then I remembered I hadn't seen my dad since lunch, and he usually makes it home within an hour of closing. It was well past closing time, and he'd barely been gone for 2 hours, but he didn't seem tired or hungry. He was acting like nothing unusual had happened. We sat down to dinner, and I told him about the footprint again, but he still didn't react like I expected him to. He didn't even look at me. Instead, he continued eating like he normally would. Finally, I lost it. I started yelling at him about how nobody was answering his phone and how some kid left a footprint in his truck. But the more I yelled, the calmer he got. "What are you so upset about?" he asked. He sounded genuinely confused, like he had no idea what I was talking about. "Nobody answered your phone. A kid left a footprint in your truck. Do you not care about that?" I asked. "Why would I care about some kid leaving a footprint in my truck?" Dad asked. Then he paused, glancing out the window. "I think I know who did it," he added quietly. "Who?" I asked. But before Dad could answer, he stopped himself and shook his head. "Never mind, it doesn't matter." So that's when I knew I had imagined it all. My dad wasn't ignoring me. He was hearing something I couldn't. I think I just had some kind of mental breakdown or something. Because I've been under a lot of stress lately, I thought. But then my dad suddenly stood up, knocking his chair backwards. "Where are you going?" I asked. "I have to go check on something," he said. And with that, he rushed out the door. I stood up and followed him. I had to know if he was okay. What was he doing? Why was he acting so weird? But before I could reach him, he disappeared into the darkness. I called his name, but he didn't answer. He was gone. It wasn't until the next morning that I realized how close I'd been to danger. You see, when I went to the truck last night, I didn't just find a footprint. I actually found two. There was a set of prints on the ground leading away from the truck and into the woods behind our house. And last night, I didn't realize that because I was too focused on the footprint in the truck. But when the sun rose and I looked at those prints again, it became obvious that whoever had been in my truck was hiding in the woods. Right now, I don't know where Dad went. I hope he's okay, I whispered, rushing to finish getting ready for school so I could go tell the police what happened. And as I ran out the door, I looked back at the woods. That's when I noticed that something was wrong. The trees seemed to be swaying in the wind, but there was no wind. And when I looked closer, I realized that the branches were moving on their own. They were moving towards my house.